How pitiful is life for a child without a mother? Just for a single meal. They had to watch their aunt's every mood. Every day, they work non-stop in the fields just to earn one simple meal. How much can a motherless child be forced to endure? How much suffering comes with every bite of food, deep in a mountain village in Yunnan. Yingzi lived alone with her 6-year-old middle sister and 4-year-old youngest sister. 3 girls had to survive on their own. Their mother could no longer bear the family's poverty. She ran away with a single man from the village. Their father had to leave home year-round for work just to support the family. The burden of caring for her 2 little sisters fell on tiny, skinny Yingzi. Before the sky was even fully bright, 10-year-old Yingzi was already up. Winter deep in the mountains dropped several degrees below freezing. She wore only a thin coat covered in big patches, and shivered as she drank a few sips of cold water. That counted as breakfast. Then she hurried with her sisters to their aunt's house. Why? Because if they didn't work, they didn't eat. When they reached the door, they heard their cousins laughing inside while watching TV. Yingzi could only peek through the crack in the door. Then she quickly pulled back and rubbed her stiff, frozen hands. How could she dare go inside? She was afraid her aunt would see her as a nuisance, so she turned around and squatted in the yard to wash potatoes. The water was painfully cold. The frostbite on Yingzi's hands had already split open. Her hands were red in some places, and some wounds were even oozing pus. Even so, Yingzi did not dare stop. She had only one thought in her mind: wash faster, wash cleaner, so her little sisters could eat enough at noon. After washing the potatoes, she boiled them for her aunt. Then she had to dump them into the pig trough and mash them. With her tiny body, every stump made her whole body sweat. Her face turned bright red. The sweat on her forehead froze almost as soon as it appeared. Even then, she still did not dare stop. She was afraid of being scolded by her aunt. Her middle sister was not idle either. She drove the pigs up the hillside. At such a young age, she already knew how to herd. It was heartbreaking to see. After finally making it to lunch, there was actually meat on the table that day. Yingzi's eyes lit up. She stole a few glances at it. When her aunt wasn't paying attention, she carefully picked up a few pieces of meat and put them in her youngest sister's bowl. Her youngest sister held the meat in her mouth, afraid to chew. She just kept it there. They had not tasted the smell of meat in half a year. Yingzi suddenly found a little courage. She picked up another piece for her middle sister. But the moment it touched the edge of the bowl, her aunt shouted at her, "You still dare to take more. Why don't you eat the bowl too?" Yingzi could only pretend she hadn't heard. She quickly lowered her head and ate her plain white rice. She didn't even dare touch the food near the meat. Can you even call that eating? It was more like begging, and after the meal, it still wasn't over. Their aunt made them carry dried manure up to the 2nd floor. She said they couldn't be allowed to eat that meal for free. The 3 sisters worked until sunset before going home. But home was even worse. The house was as cold as an ice cellar. The damp firewood took forever to light. The smoke made the youngest sister cough nonstop. Yingzi buried potatoes in the fire. That was dinner. Even if they were tired of potatoes, they still had to eat them. If they didn't eat, they would go hungry. Yingzi put her wet shoes beside the fire to dry. Her little sister saw that her own rain shoes were torn too. She first dug the mud out of the shoes. Then she warmed them by the fire and put them back on. That pair of shoes had already been worn by 3 children, first by an older cousin, then by Yingzi, and now by the youngest sister. They were already a battered pair of torn shoes, but they were her youngest sister's only winter shoes. Sleeping at night was even more painful to watch. All 3 girls squeezed into one bed. They shared a quilt that had been used for 3 generations. The quilt was stiff and dirty, full of a moldy smell. It barely kept them warm at all. Whenever the youngest sister wet the bed, they had to get up in the middle of the night to hang the quilt out. Then they shivered until morning. One day, right after they came back from their aunt's house, the youngest sister suddenly started crying. Blood had stuck her sock to the wound on her foot. Yingzi found a small piece of tissue to cover it, but it kept falling off. Then the little girl suddenly stuck out her tongue and carefully licked the tissue wet before pressing it on. This time, it finally stayed in place. Then she put on her torn shoes and kept walking. Seeing that, who wouldn't feel their heart sink? Finally, one day, their aunt said their father was coming home. The sisters waited at the village entrance from dawn. When they saw their father, the youngest sister was the first to run to him. Their father held her in his arms. When he touched her greasy, dirty little hands, his eyes immediately turned red. He quickly boiled a basin of hot water to wash her hands. Yingzi said softly, "We haven't taken a bath in years." Who could hear those words and not feel pain? Children in the city complain about bathing every day, while for these girls, even one hot bath was a luxury. After their father came home, Yingzi finally no longer had to cook by herself. She took a kitchen knife and quietly went to her aunt's field to cut a large cabbage. When she got home, she pulled an old broken table out from the corner. With a broom, she gently swept the dust from the tabletop. At that moment, their grandfather took out the noodles their father had brought back from far away. He cooked a pot of plain noodle soup. Then he added a few cabbage leaves. The three sisters gathered around the table and ate with so much happiness. The meal was simple, but to them, it was a long-awaited moment of happiness. After the meal, their grandfather talked with their father about sending Yingzi to school. They couldn't let her spend her whole life doing farm work in the mountains. After discussing it for a long time, they decided their father would take the two younger sisters to the city. Yingzi would stay in the village and go to school. When Yingzi heard that, she felt both happy and sad. She was happy because she could finally go to school. She was sad because she had to be separated from her sister. Early the next morning, her middle sister and youngest sister put on new clothes and left for the city with their father. They walked more than 10 kilometers before finally reaching the small bus stop. It was the first time either girl had ever ridden in a vehicle. They pressed against the window, their eyes full of curiosity. After they left, Yingzi had her first day of school. The teacher seated her in the very last row, but she didn't mind at all. Just being able to enter a classroom and see school books felt like an incredible blessing to her. After school, snack vendors were waiting by the school gate. Yingzi had never seen so many kinds of snacks before. The classmates with pocket money all bought some. She could only stand off to the side and stare, too afraid to come closer. That night when she went home, all she had to eat were potatoes. After dinner, Yingzi took something from her pocket. It was an empty spicy snack wrapper left by a classmate. She held it close to her nose and smelled it. Then she carefully licked it. That tiny bit of oily seasoning smelled better to her than anything else. As Lunar New Year approached, their father finally came home. But unexpectedly, he brought back a stepmother. The stepmother also had the daughters of her own. What had been a family of 4 suddenly became a family of 7. Their father used his savings to buy several sheep. He said he would stop leaving for work and raise livestock at home instead. Yingzi was especially happy. At last, she could herd her own family's sheep with her sisters. She no longer had to work at her aunt's house, and she no longer had to read her aunt's face just to earn a meal. But a stepmother is still a stepmother. Every time she did laundry, she washed only her own daughter's clothes. Yingzi was still the one responsible for washing her sister's clothes. The stepmother's arrival did not bring them much warmth. One day, they were sitting outside in the sun with their stepmother. The stepmother was picking lice from her own daughters. She seemed very skilled at it. The middle sister wanted her stepmother to help her too. The stepmother's face changed immediately. She pushed the girl aside. The middle sister said her stepmother was being unfair. Instead, she was scolded again. The sisters sat nearby, heartbroken, and softly hummed, "Only Mom is good." Their singing was off-key. But, as it floated through the mountains, it was enough to break your heart. Even the cameraman there quietly wiped away tears. There are still many children in this world like Yingzi. They live on the edge of poverty. They have no father to cherish them and no mother to love them. They are still trying hard to live. Their stories show us how cruel life can be. But they also show us how strong these children are. Every child deserves a happy childhood. Every dream deserves to be protected. May Yingzi and every child like her one day leave the mountains and live a better life.